So here I've got the Enneagrams of the Fixations, the original teachings by Ichazo. I just want to go through each type and talk about, figure out what the fuck happened in terms of what happened to the types over time, because this is the original Enneagram, and a lot of this was occulted within the Eureka school until pretty recently, and the information has been shared with everybody. So these are the original Fixations. They are the same types. It's just the way they've been explained has been completely bastardized and butchered beyond belief. So let's start out with the gut types. 8, 9, and 1. This is how the self-preservation instinct was born, actually. Although Ichazo didn't believe in it in terms of something separate from type. That was Naranjo. He came along and added that. But originally, this was the conservation instinct. They're known as the being group. Now, also conservation instinct, being group. How am I? Okay, so 8, 9, and 1 are all focused on the quality of life, how they're feeling, how their world is doing, just the quality and the state of everything. How they feel as a person. It's identified with the body, right? So have I slept? Do I feel hungry? It's all the basic needs, bodily pleasures, sensate goings on. It's a very strong connection to the body and to what's happening in the here and now, and a state of being, a quality of being. That's how we would describe the original gut type. And there are many different ways to go into that. So many different books have been written about the Enneagram, and they all like to take it in different directions. What I'd like to do is to try to balance all of this out and root it to the original theory. So that's the being group. Let's talk about 8 first. This is the moralist, the original moralist. The 8 perceives injustice in the quality of their being. They look around and they see things that are wrong with the world. They see a world that's trying to oppress them, basically. They see injustice in how they're being treated. They can come to see injustice in how they treat others, but in a more general sense, they're seeing it out there, and the world is happening to them. That's their projection. That is the type 8 on a basic level. It's not an interpretation. That was where this type started. So they react to that with vengeance. This is the vengeful type. This is why if you do something to an 8 they don't like, you're likely to get a reaction of some kind. They're frequently acting vengefully. The revenge can take various forms. It takes some lustful form, which is integrating some of the passion of the type. You have lust and excess. So they take things to extremes. They might get angry. They might go out and buy a new car. They might go out and destroy something. They might go on an eating binge. But it's all of this reactivity to injustice and to this state of being that they're in, which is life isn't fair. I got to get mine. I have to get the world back. That's the type 8. All right, type 9. Type 9 is obviously, I'm not as familiar with the 9, but we know what the 9 is, and they're known as the seeker. And here we talk about the seeker is disconnected from being. So in each triad, you have one point, the cardinal point, which is actually disconnected from the triad. So in conservation instinct, this is the state of the body, the state of what's going on, their judgments about what's going on. The 9 is withdrawn from that. There's a lack of that sense, a lack of judgment and criticality, a kind of not really knowing how they feel about things. They look outside of themselves for the answer. That's why they're called the seeker. But internally, there's almost nothing there. It's kind of an absence of a fixation with the 9. And like the other types, the cardinal points and the other triads, the 3 and the 6, the 9 is at somewhat of a loss to really make sense of things on their own. They have to look outwards, and they end up in seeking mode. They frequently get caught in routines and automated strategies and diverting to externals. So inside they're missing that strong moral sense that the 8 actually has too much of. So the 9 swings the other way and doesn't find much there, doesn't see a strong sense of morality per se. They are sensitive to all points of view because they themselves don't have one in a sense. So they become filled up by the views around them is a nice way to look at the type 9, and they fall asleep to themselves. So, okay, next we've got 1. 1 responds to the state of their being through a lens of perfectionism. They, similar to the 8, they look for something that's unattainable, which in this case is perfection. Everywhere they're going to see imperfection. So they're going to feel it in their lifestyle, and they look around, they'll look at themselves, they'll notice they're imperfect, they'll notice others, notice that those other people are imperfect. It's this constant state of things just not being good enough. It's similar to the 8, except it's not of a moral nature. It's not like, hey, someone's done something wrong here and it's an injustice and I'm being harmed and I got to get you back. I have to get retribution. That's the 8. This is something else. This is imperfection, right? Things aren't good enough. We got to make things right. We have to fix this so that it's working properly, so that this is to a higher standard. You know, you got a B on the test. You got to get an A on the test next time. Your room is tidy, but it's not perfect. It's this kind of constant needing to reform things and to try to perfect things. And the more they try, the more they see the imperfections, and the angrier they get. They get angry about the struggle, angry at themselves, angry at others. So it's kind of opposite of the 8 in some ways, in that they don't react with excess and vengeance. They react with a kind of an anger that they try to use as fuel then to be more perfect. So they don't really release the anger. They don't go for the revenge necessarily. Instead, they double over their efforts to try to be perfect and to reform themselves. All right, so that's the first, that's the conservation instinct as it's known. Later on, this gave birth to the instinctual drives that are parsed separately from type. The self-preservation instinct was born from this triad. That's why it is known as the body triad, the gut triad. It focuses on the everyday, here I am, how do I feel, how do you feel, what's going on in our world. It's not so much about relationships. We look to the heart triad to look more for the relationships, the quality of the relationships, but it's more about the state of everything in my life together, that state of being, and in particular the needs of the body, the senses, what can be perceived with the senses, the physical here and now, and my surroundings and all of that. So yeah, I hope this was helpful for you. I'd like to also go into the other triads, but I just want to do a short one, an introduction. Again, this is an amazing book because it shows where everything started. By 1968, all of this was here, and it hadn't all been written down like this, but it was being taught in the school, and so it's pretty valuable. This is literally what the Enneagram was born from, and so much of it has been distorted and favored in a biased way. I feel that many portraits of the types look at such an incredibly biased, one-dimensional view of the types. We have a type like the 8, for example, my type, which is very moralistic type. They've been turned into something called the Challenger, which is like not even that moralistic, really. It takes away the soul of the type. It takes away their whole reasons for being there. There has to be a reason, and just calling them the Challenger is a little bit ridiculous and stupid, because they're not just challengers. They're moralists. They have a sense of morality. They believe in justice. Everything about the 8 was born out of this basic state of injustice, that they aren't being treated properly, and it often extends to the people in their world. So that's just one example of, a fixation, a type that was completely distorted and taken in a different direction later on by many authors, and now nobody understands the type. It's a frequently mistyped and misunderstood type. Some people like to call, confuse them with the 6. It gets so backwards that you can have genuine type 8s that are just being gaslighted and called 6s, just on general principle, because the world doesn't know how to handle us. We are moralistic people, and we tend to focus on those injustices and what's not going right in the world. So if you have somebody that's doing that and pissing you off, it's easy to just say, look, I think you're the 6, or, you know, you seem rebellious, really. But that's not even what the 6 is about. I mean, people are taking a type like 6 and trying to fit everything into the box of the 6, and it makes no sense. Literally, the 6 is not about that at all. The 6 is a fear type, for one, so they're focused on fear, and it's a fear of not being able to make it in the world on some level. It's a fear of what's out there. It's the sense they don't know what to do. There's an uncertainty. They're in a completely different triad. It's not about the state of being. It's actually called the doing triad, and it was originally about actions and acting in the world and being able to act with certainty. That's the space of the 5, 6, 7. The 6 in particular struggles the most with having, like the 9, they're out of touch with that inner sense of guidance, that sense of knowing what to do, how to do, how to plan, how to act in the world in a functional capacity, so that they, you know, won't be afraid, so that they won't be harmed, so that things will go well. That's a little bit about, you know, some difference between the 6 and the 8. I'd like to go into more detail later on, but for now, that's what I've got. Definitely check this book out. You can get them on Amazon. There's a number of books by Ichazo. This one was kind of expensive. It was $50, but think of it as a college textbook. You know, textbooks often are expensive, and you gotta shell out a little bit of money for the good stuff sometimes. The rest of it's just, you know, mass marketed pop stuff. I would skip that, honestly. There's too much of that as it goes. All right, thank you.